Who needs stealth when you're a badass? Oh my god. Okay. Perfect timing.
Hello, my name is Colin Ernest. I'm the professional top laner for EchoFox, and my IGN is Solo.
Fox is doing a great job of working around the map. They're just slowly hook, line, and sinkering Liquid out of their base into positions they want them, and then able to get the fights. He lost for yesterday, but has returned with both familiar faces and new names to fill out the roster. They've drafted 2 players from Challenger squad, Ember.
Today, we are joined by esports competitor and top laner for Team EchoFox, Solo. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Definitely. Congratulations on the strong performance leading up to this point in the split. Tying for 5th place is really great performance in such a grueling league.
Yeah, I mean, considering where we were at, like around like week 6, week 7, I think we really turned it around. I think we have something to be proud of.
What do you think kind of made that happen in week 6, week 7?
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't think there's anything that's, jumps out as being the reason. I think, having Rush be reintegrated into the roster, and having that time apart kind of gave everyone more of an appreciation and understanding of each other. And we were just able to kind of start getting that synergy that we needed to have, and it kind of gave us the ability to start being able to compete against the top teams.
The entire competition, the LCS, is really strong. I read an article that you were interviewed in with Action Esports, and you said some teams are kind of pulling away from a pack. What has it been like as an organization standing kind of on that threshold of the top 5, kind of really going neck and neck to kind of jump into that top 5 with TSM, C9, and Team Liquid?
Yeah, I mean, I think EchoFox has done a lot. Obviously, this is my first opportunity to be here with them, but yeah, I think it's really impressive that EchoFox has been in the league and done the same things that TSM, TL, and C9 has done, which is make playoffs, all of the splits for franchising. I think that's that's really good company to be in, and I think they're a great org with a great direction. And you see some of the kind of what ends up happening when you have all those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have been doing pretty well there. I know you're fairly new to the organization of EchoFox itself here in 2019, of which I would like to talk about here and kind of segue into it. But it's still got to feel kind of good knowing that you've kind of been moving through these organizations, and the one that you are proudly a part of right now is kind of outperformed the last one. But in the same way, you've kind of been involved with Cloud9 and the Challengers League and some other things like that, putting you in kind of uniquely positioned to kind of understand the competition a little bit differently. How do you feel that your understanding of these teams as a former player kind of influences your game sense in competition right now?
I mean, kind of I've been a part of a lot of organizations, so I think just you kind of get the experience of being able to work with different people and being able to adapt to different environments. And I mean, there is some value in that, in being able to like bounce around, and just being able to get along with everyone. And everyone wants to win, so there always is that like common goal between orgs. But I think especially, I don't know, EchoFox just has a different feel to it, to be honest. I mean, not to say that any of the orgs I've been on in the past are bad, but they really have this like, because Rick Fox and Jared Jeffries and Khalid are all like really sports guys, so they kind of get it that it's always going to be a process, that winning championships isn't something that happens overnight. It's something that takes a lot of work and a lot of consistency, and they've kind of been always pushing that towards the coaching staff and towards the players, that it's a process and it's a long journey, and then you're just trying to set yourself up in the best spot possible.
I can only imagine how having someone so established in sports like Rick being involved in the kind of the organization structure can lead to that mindset. What can you see like a little bit more maybe firsthand as far as maybe some of the type of differences that the real sports centric training maybe has being brought compared to an organization that doesn't have that core?
Yeah, I think there's just, the longer the league is kind of combined with like more of like an NBA feel, because we have a lot of NBA orgs that are part of League of Legends teams right now. I mean, the longer that happens, and we're starting to see it more, it's just going to be more emphasis on just like healthy living throughout, like, making sure that your diet is really good, making sure you're doing proper exercise, and then making sure that you have, proper sleep habits, because I think that's some of the stuff we're taking the most out of being a part of like the NBA, like having NBA orgs be a part of the league, is just realizing that the best thing to do to get the most out of your players is to kind of try to make their lives like try to get them to be like almost like a machine, right? Where you're running really efficiently and then you're always showing up at a certain level for practice so you can get the most out of it. And I think that's the thing we're taking the most out of being a part of like having people that are NBA veterans and having people who are inside the sports world more.
Yeah, so it sounds like consistency is one of those key things, and then of course, optimizing your own body a little bit. So we see a lot of similarities in the streamers and stuff about the consistency being somewhat of the key to their success. But let's go back for a moment and get some context for people. When and how did you first start playing video games? Like way before LoL. What was your first game?
I'm not sure I can remember necessarily like a first game. I think I really started playing just video games in general when I started playing like Super Nintendo or like the original PlayStation when I was a kid. And I just like enjoying those things. My grandmother always really liked gaming because she was a nurse, so she would play Game Boy while she was on at the hospital because she worked like night shifts. So I got some of that from her, and she enjoyed it and kind of brought that into my life. So that was kind of like the stepping off point for when I like really started getting into just like gaming, but it was more for fun. I don't think I was growing up ever thinking that this would be like a career path, because before this wasn't really like necessarily a thing.
Yeah, I mean, just now looking back to what the college scene has going on makes me super envious, and I still got a toe in the college area. Just yourself raising up sounds like you've kind of always been around games, but even so, it's still a little bit before it was kind of picked up as a potential career path. Your first Liquipedia entry official for like a team starts in 2015 with the C9 Challenger roster. How did you get into this competitive scene when it wasn't necessarily such a clear path for you already? What was that first kind of coming across League of Legends to the journey to getting on a team like?
Yeah, it was. I mean, even before franchising, I guess before maybe like season 5, it was really like, the wild, wild west out when it came to getting like esports teams. I mean, if you weren't in LCS and you were bouncing around from like challenger team, it was pretty rough. I mean, not that we were like treated poorly or anything, but I mean, you were getting paid like almost close to nothing, right? And you were like definitely taking a backseat to kind of the priority of LCS, more so than even now. But yeah, I mean, the first team I got on, C9 was like kind of the first major team because they were an established org. But I got on another challenger team called Zenith Esports, which I think they're around to some degree. But I was just playing League, and I was getting into like amateur tournaments. Because I thought it was just really fun and competitive, and I had some friends that were also like higher elo, and I just wanted to do some like competition for fun, and I just ended up performing well and decided to try and get onto like the next team, right? And you're just trying to always, get to that next level of team and try and improve. And after Zenith, I was just fortunate enough to get in contact with C9. They were doing tryouts, and I was just, they decided to go with me, and I was super happy. And then that's kind of how I started getting into like the legitimate scene, being a part of that team.
What about rankings, kind of, when you did get in with Zenith? Where were you sitting at? Were you already past Diamond, or where kind of were you?
I don't remember exactly. I was certainly like a challenger player in that point, but I think it was still. I can't remember when they changed the system from being like 50 challenger players to 200, but I was either challenger or like in that kind of realm of like when you're D1 like 99 points. So I was still up there, like I was still playing with all the pro players, and so I was like a high-ranking player. I mean, it's that's definitely kind of the threshold you want to be at, is be like at the top of the ladder if you want to get noticed by people.
And did you find yourself getting noticed as far as they were coming to you because your tag was on the top of the leaderboards, or was it a little bit more of the networking you were doing in chat and maybe afterwards on whatever chat program you were using at the time? How did you kind of negotiate that?
I mean, a lot of it is, I mean, to first, at least, the route is like a little bit different back then. I mean, I'm not sure what necessarily people do now, but at least back then it was basically you get high elo, and then you try to like network, I guess. I mean, some of the other like higher up players, especially the ones that are on like challenger teams, and I mean, you want to be friendly with them and make connections and try and play with people you want to play with. So in that case, I was on Zenith, so I wasn't like, I mean, people didn't know who I was necessarily, but people like, I mean, were aware of kind of my existence. I mean, I had played versus some of the people who I ended up being on C9 with, and some of the other people in that league. So they like knew about me, and then they were just holding tryouts, and I was able to get my name in because I mean I had played a little bit at that time, and also I was still on like challenger ladder, and it was just like a full like in-house league sort of thing. I forget how many people there were, but there was like 3 or 4 people for each position, shuffling players in and out, like through like a week or 2 process, and yeah, I mean I just ended up being out on top and then making the team. So it was like a combination of being like high up on the ladder, but also being within the league for a little bit. And that's what I'm saying, where a lot of it back then was just trying to like get higher and higher. Like you would play a split with a team, and then if you did well, you try to get to like the next, the next best team, and then you go to the next best team until you're either, the top of the challenger league, or you get to a, bottom tier LCS team. So.
Did that include a lot of like self-promotion? Like right now, I know a lot of this is both doing it and then distributing that you did it. Because you are in that league at the time, I'm sure there was a lot of press going on and kind of sharing who won each round. Did you find yourself playing a part as far as like that content distribution, getting your name out there, or was it kind of organic and you just focused purely on that competition part?
Yeah, I was just mostly just playing. I never have been very much for like self-branding or self-promotion. So yeah, all of it was just, I mean, I wasn't even necessarily that friendly with a lot of the people. Like, I mean, I keep to myself for the most part, so it was just mostly based off just play and then being in the right place at the right time.
Well, this sounds very much kind of like making it up as you go scenario back then. There wasn't really a formal structure, and you kind of just worked as hard as you could at the technicals and let the rest kind of fill its way. Where in there did you have that kind of aha moment in knowing that you could kind of keep playing games instead of getting a traditional job when it was so informal?
Well, I think after I joined C9, I mean, I definitely felt that as long as I was improving, I would keep doing this. And I knew that I was good enough to be able to play LCS, and it was more like a matter of time sort of thing than it was a like, will I make it sort of. So I felt confident that I was going to be able to get to that point, and I mean I had job security in the fact that I was always going to be picked up by at least a challenger team or like another org. So at that point, but I guess it became more of like a serious career after when I joined Ember, because then it became, when Ember joined the league, they kind of changed things to, I mean, they kind of helped players get paid, pretty well. And they kind of like changed the way the league was viewed when they came in, because they were like, I mean, they came in with a lot of funding, and they spent like the big money, and they kind of showed, what it could be like if you get kind of like the VC backing and you get a lot of funding. I think they did like a lot of things right, but they were the first team to kind of do the things they did, like set up like a documentary, like a full-blown documentary where they followed us around like all the time. They did a lot of like the health and mental side of things that not a lot of teams have been like touching on, and they had a lot of, I mean, they did like public salaries, and they paid players really well with like performance bonuses. So I mean, they kind of changed the game a bit, and it's unfortunate that didn't work out with them. But yeah, Ember was the time where I realized that it could be like more of a career instead of just a for fun thing, right?
Yeah, it's a shame that in order to do something first like that, you're often turned into a martyr just because the market isn't ready for it. But definitely their influence has been positive. In that time with Ember, not only did it kind of give you that first, it sounds like gave you that first modern esports competitor kind of environment, but it also was your chance to sub in for Echo Fox for the first time at the LCS, right?
Oh yeah, we Echo Fox was going through some visa issues, so myself and Golden Glue were able to sub for them, and I mean, we didn't win any games, but we came pretty close a couple times. It was a learning experience, but I mean, I'm glad it happened, but it certainly was difficult because we kind of, I mean, we didn't really like scrim with them. We just kind of like showed up to play, so we were at like a small disadvantage no matter what. But I think just having the time in that environment was good. I mean, I learned a lot, and yeah, I mean, you can never really complain about getting like free LCS time, especially when you're starting out.
Well, clearly they liked the performance you did for them, even if you didn't win the games. To be able to jump in and adapt to a team like that on the fly has got to be itself outstanding. It was only 2 years later that you were actually with the team officially. What can you tell me about that journey afterwards? You went up to place, I think it was Gold Coin United, and then that kind of led you into Clutch Gaming. This seems to be a pretty standard story for esports competitors. A lot of people get traded around a lot and kind of do that shift every year to 2 years or extent. What has the journey been like for you, being traded, and the kind of the mental state maybe that it takes to go from a team to another team and to kind of keep competing without letting it kind of impact you, if that makes sense?
Well, it's almost like the culture right now to not be with a team for more than a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, part of that is like the players wanting to, find a different environment. The kind of the grass is always greener sort of thing. But a lot of it too is just people aren't great at or a lot of the orgs aren't great at developing talent, and the league is so much of a win now sort of scenario that if your roster doesn't, make worlds in like the year that they have together. Like if they don't compete for a championship, they don't win worlds in the year that they have. And in some cases, even if they do, if you're like TL who has like aspirations to actually win worlds, it's kind of those things where, anyone can get dropped unless you're like the best player in your position for the most part, like far and away. And yeah, that happens a lot. There's just at the moment there just doesn't seem to be a lot of benefit in keeping people together. But I mean, I for one kind of disagree with that. I think players have a lot to grow even within the same teammates. And hopefully teams start like keeping squads together for at least 2 years before they decide to kind of blow it up. But yeah, that's just kind of the name of the game right now, is to if you didn't win a championship, then you might as well just move some pieces around and see what you can do.
Well, maybe as a middle ground, the increased activity now in player development, independent training, health, do you feel that that's kind of the first steps to get to this more growing a player rather than judging a player on that independent performance? Or how do you feel that it's slowly becoming that, or do you still find that there's needs to go further?
In like, I'm sorry, in regards to like player development.
Yeah. I just see a lot of teams these days are investing a lot into independent player development as far as training, health, mental states, maybe getting into independent training facilities. It seems to be a growing trend with these teams, but it kind of also doubles and hits that point apart that you just hit on about kind of independent player development and growth. Is that how do you see that playing out as far as the years go by? Because you said you began to see it with Ember, and now a couple years later here with Echo Fox, also a pro level team doing the NBA type training. How are you seeing it kind of shift and develop over those years? Is it still kind of a new thing, or has it become a little bit more standard?
I think it's becoming a bit more standard. I think at this point, as far as player development is lacking, the only thing I see is there's just a lack of time almost, like just a lack of waiting. I think it just takes a lot longer than people realize to get players to a certain level.
Mm.
Like I mean, I think giving up on players after like a year is not enough time. I think a lot of players just need to be in an environment where they feel, really relaxed and they have trust in the org and they have trust in their teammates. And, that takes time and growth to happen. And I think there's just a lot of potential that gets wasted because they're bouncing around and they can't get comfortable with their environment. So I hope there's more, attention to that. And I think also the other thing is lacking, as far as getting more NA talent, is just having more integration with academy rosters. I think being able to, at the moment, like a lot of teams I've been on, academy rosters are almost a whole. I mean, they are like your sister team in a way, but they're like a whole different unit on their own, right? They hang out with themselves. They don't really have similar play styles. They don't really like scrim that much together. So it's very strange that even now with franchising, there isn't as much integration. I think Cloud9 has done the best job of integrating their roster. And part of that is because they have a lot of talented guys. So being able to scrim them actually benefits them a lot. But I think just making an environment where you can sub players in and out and it doesn't create like tension on the team and you just realize that overall growing the 10-man roster higher up to a level is better than just having your 5-man LCS roster be like slightly better. So I hope there's more, thoughts into that, and I hope people will take more of like a risk on, subbing an LCS player or subbing an academy players, or at least using them for some scrims throughout the week, because I think having them in for a scrim block isn't like gonna truly affect like how you do an LCS.
Well, it's really insightful. Absolutely, we get a chance to operate with a lot of different teams, and I've noticed an unusual delineation between these as well. Almost as if they're two separate teams, like you said, different houses, different team structures, different coaches, even. It does make sense a little bit to kind of train up into a certain path rather than train separately. I'm sure people are listening, and I hope people take notes. I can see, though, that the major process that you keep coming back on is that core training, that core scrimming, and that be able to go back and forth with a team of a high level and then to train with them enough to kind of gain that synergy. What sort of training regimens do they have you on over at Echo Fox to kind of increase these team trainings? We know that they do them. What kind of experience is it like to kind of be trained at this high level?
I mean, it's kind of a grind, but I mean, you see the benefits of it, and I mean, everyone who's on the team is a veteran, so they are. I mean, they're willing to like put in the extra work and put in the time, but yeah, I mean, you scrim a lot and you talk about the game a lot, and it can be a bit rigorous, but I mean, similar to what all the other LCS teams do, it really is just you know, trying to just be in the zone for the whole entire split and making sure that you're always showing up to practice ready to play, and you're well rested and you're focused. Just because if I mean anyone on the team, like if you show up to practice and you're not like giving it your all and you're not your highest level of play, then that whole block can just be almost useless because someone didn't eat or someone is too tired. Someone just like decided they're just gonna mail it in for the day. And I mean, I've been guilty of doing those things from time to time, but yeah, you just want everyone to try and perform at their highest level with their highest amount of focus, so you can get the most information from what you're doing. And part of that is why scrims like have become almost like a joke in terms of like how well teams do, because different cultures produce better or worse scrim results. I mean, if you're like a team like TSM historically has been really really good in scrims just because they run a really tight ship, and they're always, I mean, their players are just like always on time, always ready to go, which is great. But I mean, I'm not going to say anybody's like a bad scrim team, but then some other teams may be a little bit more loose, and their players kind of show up and they just kind of play like not necessarily for fun, but they play a little bit off the cuff, and it's hard for them to like turn it on for scrims and take it like as seriously as they would for match day. And then you kind of see that disparity where a team can be really bad in scrims, but they have some players who can just really hit the switch for when it comes to getting to LCS matches. But that's like it's not really sustainable, because it's great that they can turn it on, but you're basically just throwing away practice at that point, and it's hard to actually like push your limits.
Yeah, I can only imagine that practicing in that state would also create bad habits if you're not moving at quite the same speed with quite the same effort. What kind of personal training do you do to ensure that you're maximizing your time, that you are showing up alert and sharp and things like this, optimizing all the time that you have? Do you have personal techniques like I don't know, do you meditate? Do you have any videos that you watch? Like, what is it that you do to kind of stay in the zone consistently?
I don't necessarily. I used to be really into kind of I don't know. I've gone like back and forth. I used to be really rigorous with my routine. I used to meditate every day. I used to work out every day. And I used to be like super conscious about everything. And to a certain extent, I almost felt like it put more pressure on myself. And I wasn't like, I almost thought I was like overthinking it to a degree. So I kind of toned down that a little bit. I mean, I still do a small workout, and I still try to go on walks and just be like really conscious of kind of being in the moment. But yeah, I think just you gotta like take it easy sometimes. I mean, if your whole entire if everything you're doing is just like 24/7, like thinking about trying to min-max your life for League, I don't know. I think it puts, at least for me, it's put like, it doesn't let my brain reset at some point. I'm never able to actually live outside of a League of Legends sort of world. And I think it just like ends up putting more pressure on myself when your whole entire life kind of revolves around the game and the competition. And I think that's a really important aspect, is being able to find things in your life that are as important or like more important than League. I think that's really good, because I mean, at the end of the day, you are just like playing a video game. And I mean, I'm as passionate as anyone about winning championships or competing and being the best. But yeah, I mean, you just gotta be able to realize that's not the end of the world. That you still have your family, you still have your friends, and those things are really important. And you might even have like other hobbies that are kind of interest of you that you can also kind of achieve mastery in and pursue as well. So I've been taking more of a step back and being more of a relaxed approach. But I will say that the most important thing, just making sure that you're always like focused and ready for practice. I think for me is just making sure that I'm always like well slept is kind of the thing I make sure I'm focused on the most. Like just trying to get your body to get your brain happy with being able to get like all the sleep you need, and not trying to like strain yourself to stay up like late to play another game of solo queue just so you can Like, I don't think sacrificing an hour of sleep is worth playing another game. I've never thought that that was very smart, because you end up almost taking that. You almost end up like sacrificing your team's practice so you can play solo queue. So I've always thought that was kind of a selfish thing to do. But yeah, I mean, I would say that just getting sleep and trying to take a step back from how serious things are and making sure it's in perspective.
It definitely sounds like you've taken a more holistic approach to your training and to your mindset, as well as a little bit of battling some of that inevitable burnout that you get from serious scrimmage. This is a common theme with a lot of people, I guess, in gaming, especially at the competitive scene. They have you on a tight chain. I mean, you're going around doing a lot, from practicing to traveling to competing. There's got to be a lot of time in there, and it sounds a little bit like you've developed a certain ability to kind of compensate for that busy, active nature with your own. Is that kind of the space that you're trying to create there that gets that balance for you?
Yeah, a little bit. Trying to find like that kind of escape, where you're not just thinking about League of Legends and thinking about like how you're gonna win and what you're gonna do for the following weeks. But yeah, I mean, a lot of players have burnout. I mean, everyone's tired at the end of the split. I mean, that's just the way it is. Especially if your team is like in a rut. I mean, everyone's tired and no one wants to, like, it's rough. It gets rough sometimes. But I mean, I always just think about it as like, I would rather be doing this than anything else. So like, I mean, what, it's as good as it gets. I would be much more tired if I was doing something else, so I might as well just push through it. But yeah, it's tough. It's definitely like a mental part of it. Because once the season starts and once you start practicing, you are, I mean, you're just in it. Like, you're just all the time trying to put in as much time as possible. And once you get to like week 7, week 8, it's start to like ramp up, and you're just getting really tired. And the longer I mean, I can imagine that the teams that go to like MSI or Worlds, I'm always surprised when they come back and they're not and they don't slump at the beginning, because when you're putting in that much time in that high stress environment, I mean, when you get done, I mean, you just get there must be just like such an exhaustion from being finished. So I always give props to teams that can come back and then perform at a high level when they have international tournaments.
Definitely. I also noticed that you yourself have decided to, how do I say this? You've been around for a couple of years in competitive at a high level, and it seems relatively normal in this position for a lot of people to pick up a type of streaming habit. And this typically comes as a downside to competition. So I got some questions for you about why it is that you don't necessarily stream as much as you used to, and kind of your choices in dedicating time to the competition versus that kind of public thing. I know you said briefly in the beginning that you've never really given much time to personal branding. Kind of walk me through that. What's your decision process here, and how do you kind of balance that when it otherwise kind of fits within your realm?
Well, as far as the streaming thing goes, I don't think players necessarily sacrifice anything to stream and well as like doing well competitively. As long as they're like responsible with it. Obviously, if you're like streaming when you should be like sleeping, then yeah. I mean, there are times where it's like, okay, maybe you need to tone it down so you can like focus on your team more. But yeah, I mean, I've never really been into streaming. I mean, I'm just not a really big like social media person. I mean, I enjoy doing like content like this where it's a little bit more I guess real, I guess. I don't know, it feels a little bit more genuine just because it's like off the cuff and we're just talking. But I've never been a big Twitter person just because it feels strange to me to just try to like trying to like box my life into like a set of words, and just kind of like be an entertainment for people. I've always thought that was just kind of strange. I've never really been much to like, I just don't really like kind of opening up, I guess, necessarily to the public too much about like my personal life. I just kind of like, I mean, I like competing and I just like playing League of Legends competitively. So that's always been just what I've gotten into, and I've never really had the desire to um, try to like make extra money on streaming or try to like be more famous, I guess, as well. I just enjoy the game and I just want to play the game, and the rest of the stuff doesn't necessarily matter to me too much.
But at the end of the day, you are somewhat of a celebrity player at this point on such an impressive team, and consistently so over the years. How do you find that impacting your social media presence? Is it something that you have to kind of do private accounts and shun from since you're not a public person? Or is it always just kind of there on the edge, just with that conversation waiting to be had?
Um, I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm really that famous or anything. I mean, obviously there's people who are fans of League who know who I am, and I do get people who like DM me and say nice things to me, and I'm always appreciative, and I try and get back to them, and say thanks for the support and everything. But yeah, I just don't really have an interest in like broadcasting my life more than it already kind of is. I just having a Twitter account I have a Twitter account to like retweet stuff and everything, but I don't really have anything to say. I mean, every time I've tried to like think about something to write, it's just like, yeah, I guess it's just whatever. I don't need to say that. It's like, I mean, that's whatever. Like, is it really that important? And then, yeah, I mean, I've just never really been much to, I don't know, being a streamer and getting on Twitch. I've always looked at it as being like, you almost have to like put on a show, right? Just watching some of the people who I know as myself as like streamers, and then seeing them like within their audience and then kind of outside of streaming, they're like almost different people. And I've always been turned off to kind of, you kind of have to be like more of a personality to be successful there. And I don't really have much of an interest in kind of creating that. I would just kind of rather use my time for myself, or just focus on playing solo queue by myself.
Well, you're absolutely given the rights to do that. And actually, you can drop that word out. Wait, can I ask you real quick, where did you get your name Solo from?
I don't know. I think it was like just playing games with some friends, and like years ago, I guess, and going off on my own, and then being like, oh, look at it's like the Solo King, and then that's how it started, and then I just shortened it to Solo because it was made a lot more sense. It was cleaner, and yeah, it just made a lot more sense that way. But yeah, not really like so much of a huge origin story. It just kind of showed up somewhere, and then I knew from the very beginning I was going to shorten it to Solo at some point.
Well, that explains where the Twitch channel, the Solo King LOL, came from.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that is explained from it.
Yeah, you're so brave to run off of Solo. That's what my friends say. They're like, oh, he's so brave going out there. And then I become the little X on the screen. What can you say the most, or rather, it may be fun in games, and a lot of time it seems that you're kind of in it for the love of the game, the competition of the game, not necessarily the other side things like streaming and the celebrity that can be grown from it. But at the end of the day, this is a business, right? You need to be able to continue your progress without getting into specifics of your income or anything like that. What can you discuss with us about the business of being an esports pro? Do you kind of sign a contract and get a salary like a music deal, or what is kind of the process? Or do you have opportunities, whether current or future plans, kind of in this community? What is the kind of the standard path for someone like you?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to talk about it. I mean, contracts for LCS players are just salary. You just get paid a salary. Like, it's just like sports contracts. You sign for 1, 2, 3. I'm sure there might be like more years, but a lot of times like 1, 2, or 3 years, get paid like X amount of money in that time. And yeah, I mean, you're there to play and you're there to compete, and you're like any professional athlete. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like, yeah, you're kind of paid to do a job, but I think you're asking about like esports career like overall afterwards.
Yeah, like not just that. Like there is the team itself right now, and the contract that you have with the team. Sometimes I'm not sure about necessarily prize splitting or other type of deals that you have available to you just in this environment. If you did want to kind of push your own branding or go down that path, how does a player himself kind of navigate this? I mean, you kind of would be in one of those positions to understand some of the options available, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, there is avenues uh, for like monetary gain for a lot of players. I mean, a lot of it is being popular and being like being able to be branded. Um, you got to be able to. I mean, if you look at like Sneaky Stream, for example, I mean, this guy is probably one of the most branded players out there. You know, he has like all these sponsorships, and part of those are like Cloud9, but also part of those are his own. And yeah, you can like make a lot of. I mean, you make a lot of money by doing that streaming, and you know, he's gonna be popular even when he stops playing, and he'll be able to sell his brand and get sponsors and get paid to do events. And yeah, it's like, I mean, there is a lot to get from kind of being a personality and you know, being a popular player, just like it is for any professional sports. Um, yeah, I've never really, yeah, as I said before, like I'm not really like super into that, but I do like doing. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be on the analyst desk a few times. I was fortunate enough to be on the analyst desk for even finals last year. I've always enjoyed doing broadcast stuff. So I mean, I've kind of tried to push more into that direction since I'm not doing so much streaming and social media. I've always tried to be more involved in doing, you know, content for the team, doing video content for the team, and doing stuff with Riot, because I think Riot has a lot of opportunities when it comes to helping players kind of get on the broadcast and kind of show that they're able to, you know, do analyst work and do kind of be a part of like the talk shows that they have. And I think those are also great opportunities that they provide.
It sounds like compared to most of our other guests, you have a hyper focus with the league itself, with Riot, with the type of shoutcasting type opportunities, and your focus really has centered more around the competitive nature and environment of the game than necessarily the side nature of streaming on the side. I really enjoy seeing that, and hope you futures in shoutcasting one day when you do determine that you're ready to retire your competitive screen years and years from now. What is kind of opportunities, or what is a week in the life of a competitive player like you look like these days when you're going to say podcasts like this with me, or maybe to go on stage somewhere else to kind of help a promotional type tour or things like that? What kind of things do they have you going around and doing? What kind of does this environment feel for you?
As far as like doing content goes,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's been more and more opportunities. You, yeah, there are. I've been on some other shows. I was on Loco Show yesterday. We're doing something with, I think, UCLA and their league team this weekend. So, you know, things pop up. I think every team has like their own like general content. I mean, we put out Unleashed every week of the season. We also put out Foxtails, which is like kind of a mini documentary on like each player, so you can get to know them a little bit better. We do a couple other things like Echoes, which is like our comms during the games. So, you know, you're always a part of some of the team content week to week, and what they're trying to promote. But yeah, then there also are those kind of like extra. There's those extra kind of events that you get to do, which are also really fun. I mean, it's nice to meet people who are also really passionate about League and kind of be a part of what they're trying to promote, what they're trying to do. And I'm always very happy to do those kind of things, because it's nice to be able to, like, you know, help along other people or be the part of their influence. So I've had the opportunity to meet like a lot of great people who are trying to push their league content. And I think the more the better. Yeah, as far as that goes, it is. There are some weeks where you have a lot of content to do, and there's some weeks where you have none. So it's kind of just depends on how it's going.
Well, to have an opportunity to be a part of so much of the content and to be part of the face of such a renowned brand, and to get out there and meet the community like you have been and the other players and creators around it, there's got to be a lot of influences bouncing around as far as how the content is created, where the direction is going, and maybe even a little bit about how the team kind of shows itself. From somebody on the inside, what can you tell us about how that LCS community or the Echo Fox community or maybe just the people that you interact with closely have the ability to kind of impact both yourself and maybe the organization's direction, whether that's the type of content you make or maybe even just the way that you talk about yourselves?
Yeah, I mean the community feedback is always like really important. I think we're really aware of kind of what people like and what they want to see. I know we have staff here who are always like ear to the ground sort of, and we take all the feedback and we're always trying to kind of improve what we're like all the content we're pushing out and trying to give people like what they want and what they want to see and trying to change things up because I mean it is a little bit formulaic and we're just trying to give people that little bit of extra insight maybe on like how the players live and like what they're doing and what they're kind of like behind the scenes, and we're trying to like make things that are just like really interesting to watch and keep it like concise and really entertaining. So props to them. I think making content within league that the teams do, I think it's really difficult because you're competing with so many other orgs, right? For viewership, and it's hard to, unless you're like a brand like like TSM who's already kind of so established with a fan base, it's difficult to kind of break out and be that big team that everyone looks forward to watching their stuff every week. But yeah, we're trying. Yeah, the guys here are always trying to do their best and come up with the best product possible.
Well, we love seeing what you guys are making. We love watching Unleashed every time it comes out, and your content team has been a real pleasure to work with along the way. Just in comparison to other teams that we've seen over the years that we've been in this since back in 2011. So we love the way that you guys go about it. We can see the heart inside of it. But definitely that feedback, that resonance, we see you keeping up with a lot of the modern trends. You as a player, though, both in the way that you interact in the content, sure, but also as your own independent play style is concerned. I know in Overwatch, when I used to play, when a guy called DSP Stanky came out, he kind of changed the way I played Lucio for a while. Has there ever been some sort of VOD or forum thread or Reddit thread or some sort of commentary that has just kind of changed the way that you see your game?
See the way I see it. I mean, I try to take like, I mean, I try to take some feedback from, I guess the community, but it is difficult because, I mean, they only have so much information and knowledge about the scene, but, I mean, it's kind of that 360-degree feedback sort of thing where you got to look at it top down, even though, even though the community, doesn't have all the information and maybe it's kind of a hive mind and they're not, the best people to listen to, that to some degree they have some rudimentary like, understanding and they are right in some ways. So you got to take that, but you also got to take it with a grain of salt for what they have to say. A lot of what they say is like narrative driven. But yeah, I don't look into too much. A lot of my play style and the way I play is sculpted around like things that I think are really important and kind of like fundamentals and values that I think are important and things that I want to work on, and also like what my team needs and just like kind of my uniqueness as a player. Yeah, does that answer your question a bit?
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you. You can't always listen to everyone's opinions if they're not necessarily in the room competing at that level. They don't get it in the same way that you kind of get it.
Yeah, it's just hard. I mean, no blame to them. I love that fans are passionate, and I'm like victim of this or I guess I'm a part of the problem as well, because I guess um for like I follow the NBA pretty closely, and I mean I'm sure I have the stupidest hot takes as well. I mean I'm sure I have no idea, right? I mean I'll admit that I have no idea, right?
Yeah, yeah.
About what makes a successful NBA team, and I'm sure I have such a rudimentary idea of like what it takes to win and what they should or should not do. But I always say, X player should do this more, this team should do this more, they should trade for this player, like try and get this type of thing. And I mean it's fun. I mean I'll admit it's fun to talk about that stuff, but yeah, I had no idea, and I'm sure yeah, and it's like kind of similar to League where a lot of people probably don't know, but I'm glad that they're at least passionate enough to voice themselves.
Yeah, I mean, just to get that amount of interaction and fandom, everyone's going to have an opinion, of course, and hopefully they can learn along the way. What kind of, over the years, you've been doing this, going back and forth, getting this feedback and practicing to become better, what has been the greatest learning experience for you across that time?
Greatest learning experience. It's hard to necessarily say that there's like outright a really good moment. I think. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of a process. It's hard to say that there's like a one thing where I, learned a valuable lesson or something. I think the whole experience has been a series of ups and downs, and I guess I've just gotten better at identifying ways to win. I think before I always talked about there was like this almost like euphoria of after a split would end, like after if you would win or lose after split would end, you would kind of almost everyone would kind of realize, all the things that were wrong. It's like strange, like it's like, oh wow, it seemed like we had so many problems. Like, how did we not realize this during the split, or like while we were still competing? So that's happened a lot less lately, and I think that's kind of been the learning moment, is just being able to improve on kind of identifying issues and things to focus on, and being able to kind of fix those problems during the split instead of having to wait till you're finished to realize like what went wrong. So, but it's always like a learning thing. You learn every day, and after every match you learn something new, and yeah, I mean, you just always got to be improving.
Like you said in the beginning, consistency and dedication and just all that practice. Well, we're getting close to the end of this. I can't thank you enough for coming on by. You've done really great. I really appreciate you giving us these honest answers.
Oh yeah, no problem.
It's uncommon for us to be able to talk with somebody who has such a focus on the competitive scene like you have for as long as you have. So it's really, really insightful to kind of get into that competitive mindset that's focused like this. They kind of get you out of here. I know you got a lot to do, but what is if you could give like one pro tip to somebody who wants to be a pro competitor, one thing that you can do to kind of give you that competitive edge or an opportunity to kind of get into the scene, what would that be?
I would say if you're trying to be a player within the scene, I think for starters, you definitely have to be a certain level on the ladder and be like a certain skill, and then after that it's really important to make connections with people, especially people who are pretty established within the league. I think you want to make a lot of friends. You don't want to make enemies. The scene is pretty tight and people talk a lot, and if you kind of get the brand of being a kind of annoying person or someone that they don't really want to play with, then you're never going to find yourself on a team, even if you are talented. So just being likable and being higher up on the ladder. I mean, even if you're not like some prodigy solo queue player, you can still get picked up by teams. I think people are willing to shuffle out challenger players for their academy rosters all the time, because I mean it's just about finding kind of that gem of a player. So I would say, just do your best in solo queue and just try and make connections and try and get to know people, and then hopefully you'll get noticed. And it is really like a process. So don't expect like overnight to be able to have this like huge amount of success, because that's just not how it works for almost all the people. And then if you're trying to get into the scene and maybe you're not a player and you want to get in as like some type of analyst, or like go to a coaching role or be a part of an org, I mean it's just all about showing value. I think no one expects you to have the same type of game knowledge and kind of fundamentals of someone who's like established and been in the league for 5 years. I think that's kind of unrealistic. But I mean, if you're willing to show that you have like a really good level of a solid level of league knowledge, and you're willing to like put in work, and I mean, if you want to create some type of analyst, if you want to create some type of scouting report for like a team or something to show that you can do analyst work, then yeah, that's like the way you get in the door, is just showing someone that you can already be useful. If you have your own idea of what a team needs to be better, maybe you have some stats that you think people aren't looking at close enough, and you have some way to implement them, then that's good as well. But yeah, show you can be useful, and then people will want to bring you on board and teach you a little bit more, and then that's kind of how you're going to get your foot in the door.
It's great advice about creating your own analyst. Like you said, every fan has an opinion of performance, right? It's not necessarily about being right so much as being able to show that you're engaged and to formulate some sort of path to get better. That's a really great way to provide value to somebody who's just kind of outside throwing it. I like that a lot. So the last question I have for you today is a bit of a softball. It's basically paired a little bit to gamers themselves. I mean, in the life that we have, we're constantly interacting with all sorts of different types of things. Whether it's the mouse that you have that has just that perfect click, or your Sennheiser headphones that just have that perfect resonance and depth of audio. What is that one? It doesn't have to be your OPC, but what's your favorite peripheral?
My favorite peripheral?
Yeah.
I think I guess we don't really have like a. Yeah, I would say my favorite peripheral is probably the I think Death Adder is like super solid, really like clean mouse, and yeah, I mean they're good, but yeah, I mean I like everything I use, or else I wouldn't be using it. So I think yeah, I mean whatever is your preference, I guess. I think yeah, but yeah, I think everything I use is good. So
Well,
I would say that's my answer.
I feel you on the Death Adder. I have one in my hand right now, and my right click, if you can't even hear it.
Yeah, I've always thought those were really solid. Plus, I'm more of like I kind of am more of like a minimalist, so I'm not a big fan of those like super fancy equipment.
Yeah, we were at PAX East last weekend, and there was a mouse that had a slide for your thumb, so it didn't rub against the mat as you moved it. I was like, that's fancy, but I don't know if I need it. You know?
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
It's cool. Well, Colin, I just can't thank you enough for giving us your time and coming down here today. I really appreciate it. I know you've got a lot to do to get ready for the next split. Training and stuff abound. We wish you the best of luck. We're watching every week, cheering you on. I can't wait to come out there and see you all in person for the first time. But if I don't get out there soon,
yeah, for sure.
Best of luck. We're cheering for you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you again for having me on.
Definitely. Real quick, is there anywhere you're going to be at physically in person sometime soon that people can come meet you? Competition or anything like that?
I mean, LCS is the one I know the closest, but I will. I'm sure if we're gonna do some type of fan meet, that you can follow the EchoFox Twitter or my Twitter, and I'm sure that they'll have something posted if we're gonna do something, but not entirely sure.
Okay. Well, when the premiere comes, we'll have all of that linked in the description so people can find you just the same.
Awesome.
Once again, you were fantastic. Thank you again, and just keep crushing that top lane. We're rooting for you.
Thank you.
Bye.